impossible has happened! Unbelievable! No record for human life! Off to the races, can they catch it?
Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop
Look
that
out,
man.
here comes the blue coat,
Oh,
Kevin.
they got him.
Here
They're
comes the
coming
blue
from the
coats.
left. Oh, and they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls Deep with Devin Jovan.
Welcome back to another episode of Balls Deep. If you haven't already, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. The links will be in the descriptions below. But to start off, we're going to talk about the NBA. It's playoff time, baby. So the playoffs have begun. They began, you can say, 2 days ago. Officially, it happened yesterday, but the play-in game was 2 days ago. The Suns finished 8-0 in the bubble.
For nothing.
For nothing, also because they didn't even get a chance to play in the play-in game. The Blazers were ultimately the team to take the 8th seed. They beat the Grizzlies in the play-in game, so congratulations to them. It was a great game.
Yeah, very close game.
I think the Grizzlies showed the fight that they had and the heart that they had, especially without Jaren Jackson, who played a big part in their win or in the game that they had against the Blazers early on in the bubble. Yeah. So I feel bad for the Suns because they were on a roll, and hopefully it carries over to next year.
Yeah, it's exactly like their coach was saying in the locker room. Hopefully that they got a chance to do that playing game because they hadn't actually known whether or not they were going to yet. Yeah. But he said, even if we don't, let's try to build on it next season. Like, you know what I mean? So, they got a lot of potential. They got a good young team.
For Devin Booker's sake, I just hope they turn around next season. Monty Williams is a great coach, so hopefully, like I said, it carries over to next year. He said they gained the respect of their peers in the bubble, which no one expected them to go 8-0. In predictions, they were actually predicted to go 0-8 in the bubble, and they went 8-0. So that's just impressive as it is.
Well, they had one of the toughest schedules in the bubble. A lot of people were actually even making jokes saying that
they played tough teams.
NBA didn't want them in the playoffs. But
I love the Grizzlies and I love John Morant, but I was hoping that we seen a Devin Booker versus Damian Lillard matchup for the play-in game, especially because the Grizzlies were missing Jaren Jackson as it is. So I felt like that would have been great, and it would have also helped determine the MVP of the bubble. And speaking of MVP of the bubble, it got awarded to Damian Lillard. Unanimously, he was unanimously named the bubble MVP. So he definitely earned it. They didn't go undefeated, but they got the playoff spot by a nose hair, literally, because the Nets almost took them out. Harris LeVert balled out and ultimately just missed that last shot over C.J. McCollum, and they got the spot and in the play-in game, and they were able to beat the Grizzlies to take it. So I think that would have ultimately determined the MVP.
Yeah. I think honestly that is the reason he was unanimously voted MVP. He started going off, especially after the game against the Clippers.
Yeah, it was
after they kind of pushed his buttons. But also, he did what he had to do to make his team make the playoffs. And although Devin Booker did as well, they still didn't make the playoffs. And I feel like that was really the deciding factor is one made the playoffs, the other didn't. It kind of made it easier for them,
Yeah, I had Devin Booker as MVP, but I'm not mad that Damian Lillard won. But it's kind of scary because one of his teammates said that after they lost to the Clippers, he looked him into the eye, Damian Lillard looked him in the eyes and said he was about to ball the fuck out, and he went savage mode and dropped 40 plus for 3 straight games. Yeah. And he got his team where their ultimate goal was. He didn't make it to the bubble just to make it that far, he said, and they got the playoff spot. They got to play the Lakers. I think it's a bad matchup for the Lakers. That was one team I didn't want to face, just because they had the best chance of beating us. But it's going to be a great series, and we're going to get into our round one playoff predictions in a minute. But
I mean they're a very good team. They obviously are playing a lot better in the bubble than they were towards the end of the season, especially Dame in like an MVP caliber mode. So it's definitely a scary matchup for the Lakers. Although I do think that they will end up taking it. We'll get to that later in predictions. But I do think they will end up taking it. But the Trailblazers are a very scary team and probably one of the scariest 8 seeds ever, maybe in NBA history.
Yeah, it's arguable, but it definitely
ultimately depends on what they end up doing with it to determine whether or not they are as good an 8 seed as people are saying they are.
And I think it's even scarier that there's no home court advantage. So like because they're playing on a mutual court, I think it plays more in favor to the lower seed because they don't have to go into the higher seeds home court with their fans, and they don't have to deal with that atmosphere. It's a mutual atmosphere. There's really no fans. They have the virtual fans, but it's not the same. So with it being at a mutual site, I think it's a lot more likely that an upset is likely to happen within a series. And out of all the lower seeds, I think the Blazers have the best chance of actually moving on.
Especially considering, as good a team they are, it's very likely it could go to a 7-game series. And like you said, with not having that home court advantage in a Game 7, that could change everything. You know what I mean? Going into a very hostile environment for a Game 7 is tough to do. So to go into a Game 7 and not have to deal with that, it's a toss-up. It could go anywhere,
Well, being that we're talking about the Blazers, we're going to move on to our playoff predictions, or round one playoff predictions, and we'll start off with the Lakers-Blazers. For me, I think the Blazers are playing really great. They're probably playing the best ball out of the teams remaining in the bubble, and the Lakers have been up and down within the bubble. Their last game it wasn't their last game, but the last game that a lot of their players were playing meaningful minutes was the Nuggets game. They looked great offensively. Defensively, they looked horrible. So hopefully they can fix the defensive side of the ball, their issues on the defensive side of the ball, and they can correct those to help them. But I just think this series, the Blazers' strengths are going up against the Lakers' weaknesses at this point. And the fact that they got Nurkic back, which gives them size, which is another body that they put on AD. I'm not saying AD's not going to go off, but it's another body, and he helps in terms of rebounding. But it's like our strengths go against their weakness, and their strengths go against our weakness. It's kind of hard, and I think Damian Lillard is he's gonna steal some games from the Lakers. I have it going 6 games. I have the Lakers winning in 6, but the Blazers, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 7, just because the Blazers have the hot hand at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they take game 1, but we'll see.
No, I really couldn't have said it better myself. They're hot right now. I think barring any further injury from McCollum is a huge decider for me. But I do see it going 6 games as well for the Lakers. I was very inclined to say 7 because I do think they can push it that far. Like I said, they're a very good team. They all have the hot hand. There's not a single player on that team that's playing bad, especially even Melo hitting the big shots that he needs to. CJ McCollum dropping, if he's able to keep hitting those shots that he's been hitting, consistently as he's done, and then Dame playing MVP caliber basketball, I could see it going to 7, although I do think it goes 6, and I think the Lakers take it.
I hope we don't have to see Game 7. It'll be kind of nerve-wracking. But to move on to the next series, it'll be, in the Western Conference, is between the 4th and 5th seed, the Thunder versus the Rockets. Who do you have winning? How many games do you have it going?
I got the Houston Rockets in 5. I think it's gonna be a little tough. It's gonna be a little tougher depending, when we see Russell Westbrook back, because obviously he's not playing right now, dealing with little injury. But we will see. I mean, obviously, depending on how soon or late he comes back in the series, um, will determine how many games it goes, I believe. But I still do think that the max it'll go is 5 games. I think James Harden just has too much firepower. The team is too good offensively, a team, and I just don't think that the Thunder stack up really well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting that you said you don't think they don't stack pretty well. I actually have the Thunder winning in 7. I'm actually very impressed with the guard play of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Just the trio that they have going on with Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that rotation is really good, and the Rockets struggle on defense, and they also struggle with size, and that's something that the Thunder have, or they can exploit. I'm not saying, and also Russell Westbrook, like you said, is injured. He's out for sure for Game 1 with a quad injury. I think it'll be longer.
Yeah.
I think he might even miss the series and might come back if they need him. So we might see him later on in the series, just because that's a injury that you don't want to risk it. You don't want to risk it unless you have to, and I just think those factors is going to play more in favor for the Thunder. But I think obviously the Rockets are going to get theirs, especially with James Harden. James Harden is capable of dropping 60 any given night, and regardless of who's guarding him. So I think this series is going to go down to the wire. But I think ultimately those factors of size and just the rotation of guard play is going to help the Thunder in a 7-game series.
I mean, it's definitely possible. Like you said, they've had very good guard play, but to speak on the fact that you said that the Houston Rockets don't really have good defense, they've played very well in terms of, at least in the bubble. More specifically, when they faced the Bucks, they did a very good job, especially down the stretch, stopping them from getting baskets and ultimately pulling that game out, close one, with a lot of good defensive stops.
Yeah, they played Giannis very well, so yeah, it was very impressive. They have gotten better throughout the season in terms of defense, but I just think size. Yeah. Size is going to kill them, especially because they have PJ Tucker, who was already an undersized 4, playing the 5. So I think just that's going to hurt them long term, going up against Steven Adams, who's someone who's very aggressive down low when it comes to defense and boards. So I think the one thing playing in favor of the Rockets is shooting, just because they have Covington, who's a 3-and-D kind of player. They have PJ Tucker, who's also 3-and-D. They're able to stretch the floor. And with Harden, he's capable of anything. And if they can get Russell Westbrook back, he was playing probably his best ball of the season. So it can go either way. I just have the Thunder winning. I mean, their Thunder story is just amazing, just because everyone was counting them out in the beginning of the season, and they were able.
Yeah, immediately after they lost, Paul George and Westbrook, it was like they had no shot.
Yeah, no one gave them a chance to make the playoffs, and they're actually the higher seed in the matchup. So this is going to be a really great matchup, if not the best matchup of the first round. So we'll see. The next matchup is between 3 and 7. No, 3 and 6. 3 and 6. 3 and 6. Between the Nuggets and the Jazz. Game 1 was amazing. Between these teams, if the series reflects what Game 1 was for in the series between these teams, I think this will be the best series.
I think it'll definitely be the most exciting series. I don't know that the games, at least in terms of, not that the games won't be close, I think the games will be close. I think it'll actually be surprisingly that the number of games to how many, I think it won't go to as many games as, how close the scores are.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I have the Nuggets winning in... Oh, no, never mind. I have the Nuggets winning in 7. But I think the games are going to be super close, so there's going to be some... It might not even go 7, so I agree 100%. I was contemplating I was bouncing between 5 games and 7 games.
Yeah.
Just because I do think the Nuggets are going to win the series, just because of how deep they are. And also in Game 1, Donovan Mitchell dropped 57 and they still lost. So if that's capable of happening, it's more than likely it's going to happen again. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were close games, but the Nuggets kind of edged them out just due to their depth.
Yeah, for me, I got the Nuggets winning in 5. The first game was very telling for me. More specifically, like when you said, Donovan Mitchell dropped 57, and when you hear that, you automatically gotta assume like they got the win. No, they didn't.
They went to overtime.
Yeah, I mean the Nuggets are a really good, solid team. Like I said, I think the games would be close, and especially when you have a player like Donovan Mitchell who's capable of dropping 50 on any given night because he's a very talented player, especially offensively. That'll keep the games close. And I think more so you'll see them go to 6 or 7 games if he's able to steal some games.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up with the Nuggets.
I'm going to change my prediction. I'm going to say it's going 6, but the Nuggets are going to win. But the only reason why I changed that is because I just realized Game 1, he dropped 57, but he was also playing point guard because Mike Conley was not playing because he had left the bubble because his wife or fiance, girlfriend, I forget, but she had their baby. So I don't know how long he's going to be out of the bubble.
I can imagine probably not this entire series.
Yeah, he'll probably miss the entire series. So you can agree even more that it's going to go shorter in length in terms of series, but the games are going to be
very close games. Yes.
In the next series, or the last series of the West, is the Clippers and the Mavs. Game 1 was a good game up until the bad call where Porzingis got the double tech and they ejected him. He got that for no reason, and I think they robbed the Mavs of winning that game because they were up for a while up until that point, and then the Clippers made a push and ultimately took the game. And that was one game that I felt like the Mavs could have stole and would have helped them within the series. But with that, I think this is an upset alert matchup, but I don't have the Mavs winning. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavs won, especially with how well they were playing with Porzingis and Luka. And Luka had early game; he was struggling early. So if he can, come out strong early, then I think they're more than capable of winning because Porzingis is a mismatch on either side, and he was even putting Kawhi Leonard on skates.
I was just gonna say, you see him drop Kawhi?
So if he's able to put Kawhi Leonard on skates, I think he's capable of putting anyone on skates. And I think they're both mismatches. I think just Luka, his lack of defense is going to hurt them in the 7-game series. But I have the Clippers winning in 5. I think I felt like it would have went 6 if the Mavs took Game 1. But being that they lost, I think they can steal 1 game. And the Clippers are going to end up taking 4. So I wouldn't be surprised if Clippers win next. And then the Mavs win, and then they win 2 more.
I got this one going to 7 with the Clippers edging out on a close series. Like you said, the combination of Luka and KP is they were playing really well. Even with, like you said, Luka struggling early. Had it not been for that ejection that everybody didn't agree with, they most likely would have won that game. Ultimately, I think the experience and the depth of the Clippers and especially the defense of the Clippers gives them that edge over the Mavs. Kind of like you said, they gotta pick up on that defense over on the Mavs side of the ball. So
I mean, with Porzingis getting ejected, it hurt them just because he is a presence on the defensive side. But it's just hilarious because Russell Westbrook earlier in the season said that Patrick Beverley doesn't really play defense. He just sits there and chirps. It makes it seem like he's playing defense.
He's probably not wrong, but
he's not, because at the simple fact that he was the one guarding Luka Doncic for a majority of the game, and Luka still dropped 40 plus.
That's a mismatch, man. That's a mismatch.
It's gonna be interesting because they do have great defenders, and the Mavs would have to make up for it on the offensive side of the ball, but they definitely need Porzingis to step up. But it was just interesting that they're both making their playoff debuts, and
well, I mean, when you play for the Knicks,
and Doncic dropped 40 plus even with his early struggle. So imagine if he wasn't struggling early, and imagine if Porzingis didn't get ejected because he was the one that was holding them together in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and that's why I said I think it goes 7. Like I said, the depth and the defense of the Clippers I think is just too much. But Luka and KP, especially when they're both playing very well, they're a great duo. And we saw it yesterday. So I think they're capable of taking that to 7 games.
I'm not disputing that.
We move on to the East now.
The East.
We got the first matchup is the 1 versus the 8, which is Milwaukee versus Orlando. Actually, Milwaukee got upset today.
Game 1.
In Game 1, they were not playing well.
Not at all.
What do you see for this series?
So let me just start off with saying Orlando is the only team that has home court advantage.
You wouldn't be wrong.
Or should I say home state advantage? So, but I was impressed with how they came out. They came out strong, came out firing. It was crazy that it wasn't really close. Just because, especially with Fournier, which is their second leading scorer, this season, he actually was struggling and didn't score his first points until probably 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So, with that being said, everyone on the Bucks needs to step up outside of Giannis, because Giannis was doing his part, but everyone else seemed to be struggling. Especially Chris Middleton, he wasn't really hitting on offense, but I don't know. They couldn't really stop Vooch today. Vooch was playing extremely well, especially against Giannis on defense. There was times where he was boxing him out, but he wasn't trying to out-jump. Like, he was just boxing him out, and he didn't even bother jumping for the rebound, just because he knew he wasn't going to out-jump Giannis, so he was just boxing him out so that he wasn't able to jump for the rebound, and when he did, it was an offensive foul, because it was over the back.
Yep.
So if they continue to play the way they did today, I think they have an opportunity to upset Milwaukee. I don't have Milwaukee really going past the second round, surprisingly, but I don't know. I still have Milwaukee winning in 5, just for the simple fact that we've seen this last year with Orlando. Last year they played Toronto in the first round. They came out strong, came out firing. They stole Game 1 and lost 4 straight. So I kind of see a similar situation where they came out strong, stole Game 1, gonna lose 4 straight, because they're coached by a great coach in Budenholzer. So he's going to make the adjustments. They're a great team. They're gonna make the adjustments, and they're gonna ultimately come out on top. Whether it's 5 games or 6, I think Bucks win regardless. But I don't see them winning any more than 2 games. But I only have them winning 1, and that was already Game 1.
Yeah, for me, my prediction was gonna be a sweep. But after seeing the game, obviously that went out the window. I do think it still ends in 5. Like you said, the Bucks are gonna figure it out. They're a great team. They don't have the best record in the NBA for no reason. So they're gonna figure that out. I think the biggest thing for me though is the fact that both Aaron Gordon and Michael Carter Williams were out for the Magic today. So that says a little bit about the potential they have for when those players come back. The possibility of an upset. Do I think it's gonna happen? No, but there's a huge possibility there. Especially, I mean, a lot of people are not really high on the Bucks this year, even though they have a great record. They're one of the best teams in the NBA. There's not really a good feeling about them around the league. And,
I think they're a great team. I just think come playoff time, I'm not big on them. A lot of people on their team tend to shy away from the spotlight outside of Giannis.
Yeah.
So that's why I have them not really going past the second round.
Yeah, they tend to underperform come playoff time. But we seen it last year. And thus far we're seeing it this year. So I think there's a potential there, a huge potential for an upset. Especially like I said, Michael Carter Williams, Aaron Gordon both being out. That's huge. But I still got the Bucks winning in 5. They're gonna figure it out. They're a great team.
And then the next series is between 4 and 5. So the Heat and Pacers. You know, that rivalry between Jimmy Butler and T.J. Warren. We get a full series of it. I mean, the Heat today took game 1. It was close to an extent, and then the Heat kind of got on a roll and found their groove, I guess, because it was a slow start, and they separated themselves from the Pacers and they took the win. T.J. Warren played great, and then Butler stepped up when it mattered most. I have the Heat winning in 6. I think Pacers are good enough to take 2 games. I mean, they're very underrated just because they're not really a big team in terms of superstars, but I think they're capable of taking a game or 2, especially from the Heat, who tend to slack some days. But I think ultimately the Heat, with their depth and their firepower and just the experience alone, they got Iguodala, they got Jimmy Butler, so just things like that. I just think that they're gonna win, and they're gonna win in 6. It's gonna be a good series, but I have the Heat actually moving on and upsetting the Bucks. So we can talk about that next time we make our predictions.
I actually got Miami in 4. Indiana is like you said, a very good team, underrated team. One of those potential dark horse teams because they don't have a lot of like star power.
Yeah.
But I do think that Miami and their depth is just going to be too much for them. Jimmy Butler was playing really well today, especially down the stretch. So it's a tall task for Indiana, and obviously they are. It's a possibility they could steal a couple games, especially with T.J. Warren. We know what he was doing early on in the bubble.
Yeah.
But also we kind of seen what happens when him and Jimmy went up, matched up. It didn't really go well for T.J. Warren or the Pacers. So
yeah.
I just think they have too much firepower. I think they're too deep a team. I think they're too good. Although, like I said, the Pacers are a pretty good team and pretty underrated. I think the Heat are just that much better.
I agree, 100%. The next game is between 3 and 6. Celtics versus 76ers. 76ers are already down in terms of not only the series, they're down 1-0 because the Celtics took game 1 yesterday, but they're also down Ben Simmons. He left the bubble for a procedure or surgery, so it doesn't look like he's coming back. I actually have the Celtics in 5. I was leaning more towards a sweep, but I just feel like with Embiid, he's able to take over games some most of the time, and also he's essentially what the Celtics lack. So if anything, I feel like he'll steal 1 game, but I feel like the series is going to end between 4 and 5 games. I just happen to give him a 1 game steal, and I feel like Tobias Harris will help with stealing 1 game.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it won't go past 5 games. If Ben Simmons was there, maybe push 6-7 games. But I think the Celtics are just the better team. They're the deeper squad. Even without Gordon Hayward, I think they just have too much scoring power, and that's ultimately will help them move on to the next round.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. You mentioned Tobias Harris, and we've seen him take over games. He did it last year in the playoffs for Philly when they got him late on in the season. But I think this goes 4 games, especially seeing the Celtics beat them handily yesterday. No problem, really. No Ben Simmons. I would love to give Joel Embiid the benefit of the doubt, even though, he's too inconsistent of a player for me.
Oh, for sure.
Although I know he's very much capable of having a crazy night. It's like you said, the Celtics are just way too good a team, way too deep. Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart. I mean,
Jaylen Brown.
The list goes on and on.
Jaylen Brown and Tatum both went crazy in Game 1. So if they can continue to do that, the series is going to end a lot quicker.
And very quickly.
And then we're going to move on to the last series of the playoffs. The defending champion Raptors are going up against the Nets. The Nets don't really have anybody, but that's the scary part, in my opinion, just because, yeah, they don't have any superstars, but everyone on their roster has something to prove. They're actually probably playing for a roster spot next year because that roster is not going to, look the same at all. And as you've seen against the Trailblazers, they put up a fight. Partially or mostly because of Karis LeVert and what he's capable of. So I don't have them winning a game. I have it being a sweep, and I have the Raptors winning in a sweep. And that's all, mainly because the Raptors are deep. They have so much depth. They're talented, so I don't think they'll give up a game to the Nets. But I think the games are going to be a lot closer, or some games are going to be a lot closer than people give the Nets credit, because everyone's counting them out as it is. So they're going to have something to prove. So I think maybe not all the games are going to be close, but they'll definitely be in the running to steal 1 or 2 games. But I think, Raptors will pull out and ultimately sweep them.
Yeah, I got the Raptors in a sweep too. The Raptors are a very talented team. Last year's champion. Obviously, a lot of people didn't really give them credit, especially this year, didn't give them a chance. Losing Kawhi, I think they're a really good team even without Kawhi. I think winning last year with him gave them a lot of confidence, because I'll even go as far as saying I think this team is better than when they had DeRozan. So this team without Kawhi, I think, is honestly better than any time when they've had DeRozan. And honestly, they're my dark horse. I think they have the potential to make a really deep playoff run.
I think they come out the East.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's not too crazy a thought for me, honestly. I mean, they're a really good team, and they don't really have. I mean, obviously they have Kyle Lowry, but they don't. There's not a superstar on that team that's gonna drop 40 points a night. But they have Siakam, they have Kyle Lowry, they have Van Vliet. I mean, they just play so well as a unit, that team.
And I think partially that's because of their coach.
Yeah.
I think he's what's it's going to separate them from everyone else. I think he's coach of the year this year.
Yeah, and I believe he's a candidate.
Well, yeah,
he should probably win.
I think for me it's between him and Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan, like I said before, everyone counted OKC out. And they made the playoffs and are the 4th seed in the West. But also everyone counted out the Raptors. As soon as Kawhi left, they didn't really think they were championship contenders. They thought they might not even make the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds, in the East. But he has them as the 3rd best record in the NBA, 2nd in the East. So, and he's able to do this without, like you said, a superstar. He has star players in Kyle Lowry and Siakam, and you can maybe even count Van Vliet as a star player, but I think he's more of a role player.
He does what he needs to.
Yeah, but I think that system and what Nick Nurse draws up is what sets them up for success, and I think their depth and what I was just talking about is partially why I have them advancing to the second round, but I have them coming out of the East, and we can talk more about that, but I think the biggest threat to them in the East is the Celtics, and they would have to face them in the second round if they were to move on.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I think whoever comes out of that series is going to come out of the East. Like I said, they just play so well as a unit. They're such a good team, especially defensively. I think it's going to be too much for the Nets. And like I said, I think they're a dark horse. They could really surprise some people this year.
For sure. Well, that's that for NBA. We're going to move on to further sports news. So we'll be right back with more Balls Deep.
Yo, what's up, everybody? King Triple C here, the Olympic champ, the flyweight champ, and the bantamweight champion of the world. In other words, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Meh, that's right. Anyhow, I want to give a special shout out to Devin and Jovan. I know you guys have started your podcast, Balls Deep, with Devin and Jovan. I want to congratulate you guys, and I want to tell everybody that's out there that doesn't know about them to you guys follow them, subscribe to them, and you guys make sure to follow them on all your social media platforms. Because if you don't, you guys can bend the knee to Triple C.
All right, guys, we're back with more Balls Deep. We're gonna rally some new sports news off really quick. So with NFL news, Alex Smith was cleared for football activities. That's great news for him. We're all rooting for him. That's a story that we could all go behind and make sure that he gets all the support that he needs. Just because no one was really expecting him to come back from that kind of injury, and we wish him the best. With other Washington football news, they appointed Jason Wright, so he's a former player, as their team president, which is a historic hire. He's the first black president of any NFL franchise. So he's responsible for leading the organization's business divisions, which include operations, finance, sales, and marketing. He was on First Take the other day, I believe it was yesterday, and he essentially said that Ron Rivera is in charge of the personnel side, so anything that goes on with the roster and players and things of that nature, and he's in charge of anything in terms of business and making that franchise money. So they're the two CEOs, you can say, or CEOs of the franchise, and then right above them would be Dan Snyder, the owner, or whoever will be owning the team in the future. And lastly, the Seahawks waived a rookie for trying to sneak a female visitor into the team hotel. So, hey, he fumbled the bag on that one. That was his chance,
You should listen to Stephen A.
that was his chance, prove himself and make the roster. And he tried to, I guess he had her dress up in in Seahawks gear. Maybe they'll mistake her for being on the team or being a part of the team. It failed, and ultimately he was released. So that's on him. Stephen A. wasn't lying, but in terms of what's going on, but it didn't happen in the NBA. It happened in the NFL. So you had some soccer news?
Oh yeah, in the soccer news, PSG beat Atlanta 2-1, scoring two late goals. They were actually down 1-0, and they go on to face RB Leipzig, who actually surprised some people and beat Atletico 2-1. Bayern thrashed Barcelona 8-2. I wasn't very happy about that. Like we said, their defense is terrible. Lived and died by their defense, and they got murdered.
Messi.
8-2. Messi even threatened to leave the team if the coach wasn't fired, and he was. And then Lyon actually surprised some people as well and beat Man City handedly 3-1. And they will go on to face Bayern. And those are the semi-final matchups: is RB Leipzig and PSG versus Lyon and Bayern Munich. Actually starting this week.
So those are some good matchups. Hopefully, Neymar shows up, whether it's this upcoming game or if they move on the championship. That's just my guy. So, and he's known, for choking. So hopefully he just shows up and shows what he's worth, or that he's worth that money.
Oh yeah, and there is a 75% chance we get a new champion this year who's never won it all.
Who was the champion last year?
Well, Bayern is the only team left that currently that has won Champions League. So.
Oh, okay. So I'm always rooting for the underdog. So, being that Neymar's on one of those teams, I'm gonna be rooting for them. So, good luck to them, and we'll be talking more about it in future episodes. And then lastly, UFC 252 just happened this past Saturday. It was a big pay-per-view, or big main event, I should say, between Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier. And we talked about our predictions last episode, and the fight lived up to expectations. It was a great fight. It came down to the wire. I think it came down to the fifth round. Some of these judges had some ridiculous scores. I forget the score. There was one judge that had one round. They had it 3-2. Other judges had it. I think it was 4-1. I didn't see that, but DC, tore his cornea. It already looked messed up, but then Stipe, poked it out, and he tried to tell the ref that he poked him in the eye, and the ref, told him he got punched to sit down, and he said he, couldn't see anything for the rest of the fight. To find out, he tore his cornea, so his cornea is shot. So I mean, he lost the fight, so it's sad to see his career end that way.
Yeah.
But Stipe definitely deserved to win, and he, is a champion.
He fought well. Stipe, that is. I mean, they both did. Especially, Cormier going on the rest of the fight, not being able to see. He fought really well for not being able to see in one eye.
For sure.
But like you said, there were some crazy scores. I definitely did think it was closer than the scores indicated. It was 2 49-46s and 48-47. I do think the 48-47 was closer, although my thought process behind it was I thought that those first 2 rounds were not close at all, especially if you look at the strikes landed. Stipe was far and away from DC, so I think ultimately that might have been why those scores were so lopsided, and also a lot of people were saying there's possibility that one of those rounds they gave a 10-8.
Yeah, because of the knockdown in the second round. I mean, regardless, I think I would have scored it 3. I had it 3 rounds to 2, Stipe. And I mainly leaned towards Stipe just mainly because of that knockdown.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been surprised, if they did give that 10-8 round and he lost by 2 points, maybe in your scorecard.
Yeah.
But
3
I think 3 is pushing it and not giving him credit. I think after he heard the second 49-46, he was already fed up and he already knew he lost. But I'm not a huge fan of DC. I love him as a commentator, but I just feel for him in terms of his last fight going out that way, and then to see how pissed he was in his post-fight interview. It's kind of sad, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of people said that, or a lot of people weren't happy about the fact that, the eye poke, they think that maybe it would have changed the outcome. In my opinion, Stipe was already winning that fight even beforehand, and he was fighting him really well, and I actually think the eye poke, as weird as it sounds, I think DC started fighting a lot better after he got poked in the eye, because Stipe, just like in the second fight, made all the adjustments he needed to, and he was winning the fight. At least in the first 2 rounds, I thought he took both of them. So
I think the adjustments he made from the last fight to this fight were night and day. I mean, he looked like he's still a great fighter, but in terms of going up against DC, he looked like a totally different fighter.
Yeah.
Like in the second fight, DC was owning him the whole fight up until that knockout. And this fight, he had the control of the fight for the most part. So I think for him being, trapped in the state of Ohio because it was on full shutdown, and him being a first responder, I get he probably didn't have as much time on his hands to train as in comparison to DC. But I think he was in great shape. He looked great, and I'm just even more excited on what's to come for him next. Everyone's assuming Francis Ngannou is going to get the next shot, which would be his second fight against him. He already beat him in the past. I think he's going to take a break, maybe, and John Jones just relinquished his light heavyweight, so he's moving up to heavyweight for sure. I'd like to see John Jones, go up against Ngannou, and basically for a number 1 contender match, and the winner face Stipe.
Yeah, I'm basically kind of on the same page. The only thing for me is it's not often that a light heavyweight or a champion is going to move to another division and not get a title shot immediately. I think if it was anybody other than Ngannou, then I think he would get that title shot immediately. Although I know Stipe does want, he does want a break. So I could definitely see that Ngannou fight happening, and I think that is what will happen, is John Jones versus Ngannou. But like I said, it's not often that you see a champion go from one division to the next and not immediately get that title shot. I just, it makes more sense right now for the UFC to hold off on Stipe John Jones or Stipe Ngannou, even though both men equally deserving. I think they'll have them fight each other first, just for the sake of Stipe just having fought, and it'd probably be honestly the bigger matchup.
I think just between those three fighters alone in the division, the matchups you can come up with those three fighters is they're great matchups, and those are matchups that fans want to see. Whether it's John Jones and Ngannou Stipe, or Stipe John Jones, those are three great fights, and I'm excited for it, or what's to come for the heavyweight division. I know the heavyweight division hasn't really had that much competition, but they're building up in terms of at the top of the division. The talent is there, and I'm just happy to see John Jones move up, just because he's done everything he can at light heavyweight. So might as well move up and face some new faces. Yeah. And Stipe and Ngannou are two fights or two people that will test him or test his limits.
Yeah. I mean, and you got a guy like Rosenstruck who also just won his heavyweight match against Rafael dos Santos. And I think that honestly be a good matchup for John Jones too. Even though obviously I do think that John Jones is much more talented, much more skilled, and he's a champion compared to going to the heavyweight and fighting a guy who's ranked 5. But moving up to a division like heavyweight is tough to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did give him a matchup like that. But you never know. I mean, they could go any way about it, especially considering they have 5, now 6 top guys that you could really do anything with.
But it was pretty funny when after the fight, they were reading tweets that John Jones was tweeting out and talking about he's ready to move up, and then you had Joe Rogan's face like.
Well, because Joe Rogan knows. Like Joe Rogan said, he's been watching him lift those weights.
Yeah, he goes, he's putting some muscle on them skinny legs, and he's a scary sight for anyone in the heavyweight division. So I agree with him. I think a lot of fans would agree with him, but just his face alone was priceless. Another fight that was the co-main event was the Sean O'Malley Marlon Vera fight. That didn't live up to expectations for the simple fact that unfortunately Sean O'Malley injured himself and was compromised, and it ended pretty quickly after he injured himself. A lot of people aren't really going to be giving Marlon Vera the credit that he's due. I think he deserves to get credit for what he done, or what he did, I should say. But I think Sean O'Malley needs to get his rematch when healthy, just to prove that himself. Maybe that it was the injury that compromised him. Or maybe, Chico might want to prove that the injury was nothing and he was going to win regardless. So I think for both fighters, I think a second fight between them is going to be, it's going to happen down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you can attest to this. I did tell you before the fight I had Vera with the upset. I did not think it was going to happen the way it did, so it was kind of unfortunate. It wasn't really the same. You want to see two fighters stay healthy, and you want to see the better man win. But it was not nice, but it was kind of nice to see Vera win. He's a very good fighter that doesn't get much credit.
Underrated.
So for him to get a win against somebody like O'Malley, even though it might not have been the way he wanted to or the way we wanted to see, just getting that win on his resume against that fighter, and just the news alone, getting his name out there is huge. So I was kind of happy about that, because he's not a fighter that many people really give a second look. So for him to get that upset, it was nice. But the only matchup I really see at this point is him against O'Malley again. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, I maybe in the recovery process of O'Malley, he might go up against, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he had, it was his last fight before O'Malley. A lot of people thought, like myself, felt like he should have won that fight. He was robbed, and so it was good to see him bounce back. Maybe it wasn't in the fashion that he would like, but to get a win over a big name, I know O'Malley's a superstar in the making. UFC's trying to mold him into their next big fighter, and just to get like you said, a win from a big name like that and have that on your resume, it's great. But you're gonna have to fight him again to prove that it wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think that's really the only route they're gonna go. because I mean, you really didn't even get to see the fighters fight. They were still feeling each other out at that point in the fight,
And then
which was kind of the worst part about it. You couldn't really say, oh well, this guy was winning up to this point or whatever or what have you. It was just right in the beginning of the fight, almost before they even got done, feeling each other out. He's already hurt, so.
Yeah, it was just sad to see. He got put on a stretcher and was stretched out of the arena. I mean, so far so good in terms of testing, but he did. I guess it's a similar injury that he had before in an earlier fight in his career. So hopefully he's all right, and we'll see the best of him moving forward.
With that being said, we move on to someone I just mentioned, Rosenstruck getting the KO TKO and the second round against Junior Dos Santos,
who's now his actually sparring partner after that. Yeah. So that's very interesting.
It was to be expected. Rosenstruck got knocked out in his last fight against Ngannou and came back a lot better, as he said he would. He wasn't really happy about his last fight, especially considering he got knocked out.
He almost died.
But he, like I said, he did come back a lot better, like he said he would, and he looks like a different fighter. And he wants to compete for a title. And like I said, those top 5-6 guys in that heavyweight division, along with Curtis Blades. There's so many different routes the UFC could go, and actually that was my pick for his next opponent is Curtis Blades. There's so many guys atop that heavyweight division now. It's tough, and it's almost going to be like tournament style. So we'll see what route they go. But I think it'd be nice to give him a guy like Curtis Blades who would be a huge, tough challenge. So
Curtis Blades is his wrestler, so it would test him in terms of his ground and pound or his ground game. But I think, or I don't know if it's just me, it might be. I want to see him go up against Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis has knockout power. He's shown that on multiple occasions. I mean, yes, he hasn't shown up in terms of his title fight opportunities, but he's shown that he can go up against the best of them and knock you out. I mean, and Rosenstruck, outside of the Ngannou fight, has shown that as well. I mean, he almost died against Ngannou, but he's knocked people out, just like he just knocked out Junior Dos Santos, who, it was a really good fight up until that point. So, I'd like to see it because I know a knockout is going to happen, whether it's Derek Lewis knocking him out, or maybe we see Derek Lewis get knocked out by Rosenstruck. So I think I just want to see that just because we know there's going to be a highlight somewhere in that fight. And just as an entertainment factor, I think that would be my choice for next pick. But I can't dispute your choice of Curtis Blades. I think that would test him in terms of helping him grow overall as a fighter.
Yeah. With that being said, that is the conclusion of episode 6 of Balls Deep.
16.
That's what I said.
You said
6. Episode 16 of Balls Deep. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe on all platforms: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio,
Google Podcasts.
The
list goes on. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, we're there. Just
we should be your favorite podcast.
Yeah, we should be your favorite.
I mean, come on, man.
It is what it is. So, just make sure to do that, and we'll be back next week with another episode. And we appreciate you all for tuning in. Peace.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.